Hi guys, welcome back to Nat One Videos. Today I'm going to do a bit of tabletop RPG terrain building. So today hopefully we're going to create a really nice setting for this house to sit in. As I showed you at the end of the video on Monday, I did a little practice piece with the terrain. Each small element of this piece are going to exist within this larger piece, just in a bigger fashion. So as you can see, I've got a whole bunch of XPS foam, which I'm going to be using to build up some of the terrain. This main sheet I am going to be using as the base. It's my first proper piece of terrain and I want to make it something that I can put on the shelf and keep, and also I want to kind of make cliff edges out of the edges of this XPS foam, so I am using this for a good reason. I don't really have an exact picture of what I want to do in my head. I've got a rough idea. I know I want to raise the house up a little bit and a few little things, but it's just going to take shape as I build the build. So I'm going to zoom the camera in and we'll just get started cutting some XPS foam. So this is my base. Obviously I don't want it to be a rectangle. I want it to be more natural shapes, so we're going to go for some curves. So I'm just going to carve out a rough shape. There we go, and now weirdly that looks like a guitar. And now I'm just going to cut it out. This is kind of the shape that I'm going to go for. Now I want to raise the house up, so I have two pieces that I'm going to put like this. I'm going to put the house here, but I'm going to shape this. So the first thing that I need to do is hot glue these two pieces together so that I can carve them into a more natural looking shape. That's been hot glued. I'm going to rough out some edges. I've drawn a rough line in the center of this block just so I know where the house is going to be, so that I don't cut over the line. Yep, that's about it. Time lapse. Okay, so that's nicely carved out. There's lines on the edge and different things that don't matter because it's all going to get covered up. There is going to be different rocks and stuff going around the edges to make this more of a natural mound. This is just to get the main base sorted out. Now what I actually want to do is I want to carve a little cave in here. There's going to be a little cave underneath and a little puddle here. So yeah, that's the next part. I'm just going to carve out a bit of a cave here. That should be deep enough. Once I've got my other bark and stuff piled up around there, that's going to look really, really cool. All this kind of broken edges and stuff is just going to add to the stony effect ultimately. So also I'm just going to quickly carve around the edge to make it slightly more beveled at the edges as well. And there we go. Lots of little pieces of XPS foam to play with later on. It's starting to come together. There's going to be a little bear's cave. There's going to be cliffs around the edges. There's going to be green. This little bear's cave is going to come out here. There's going to be some rocks up around it and a little outcropping here. There's going to be some forest here, and I have lots of bark that I'm going to be doing standing stones. So it's going to be quite full on, a lot into a small build, but overkill is underrated, I guess, so I'm just going to go for it. The next thing, I'm going to very quickly glue down my house base, which is going to be at this kind of an angle. So this is slightly melting my XPS foam, but that really doesn't matter at this stage. Ta-da! rather than use the tinfoil ball trick, I'm just going to use some bark to beat up the whole project. It's going to get very messy, but that's cool.
Okay, if you're wondering where I got the bark, I just got it in my local park, and it is some old pine bark. You actually have to put this pine bark in the oven to decontaminate it from any sort of funguses or anything like that that you wouldn't want growing on your project. So I put it in the oven at 80 degrees for about half an hour, 40 minutes. And once it comes out, it's fine to use. So whenever you have done that, whenever you put it onto your project, obviously you're going to be Mod Podging it and painting over the top of it, and whenever you do, it results in some seriously cool looking rock formations. So I highly recommend this technique for making some bark rock formations.
Here I am still at my very messy table. I haven't been doing much talking so far because I've just been concentrating on trying to get this sorted out, but it's starting to get there. I'm quite liking it now. I'm going to do a little bit of a water feature on here, and I'm going to do that with a bit of nail polish to melt the XPS foam a little bit here and just create a little indent. So yeah, I've tried to create a little indent which is going to be like a little puddle kind of thing. Again, more tips that I'm getting from other crafters on YouTube. It's a really, really good one. Maybe just one little. So there's going to be a tree there, a tree there. Let's just see how we get on. There's some unnatural looking edges which I'm going to just put some glue in and then sprinkle in sawdust basically. Some of that will stay, some of it won't. We'll see what stays, we'll see what won't. So I'm just about to cover the whole thing in PVA glue now and add some very fine chopped up bark to some places, build it up and just create some land texture. Okay, so I've covered the whole thing in very fine bark dust, and I'm now going to go and spray it with a hairdryer, and some of it will come off and some of it will stay, but hopefully once I Mod Podge the whole thing it's going to look pretty cool. Back soon. Okay, all of the PVA and the bark has now dried, and it's looking like this. So there's my little cave, my little menhirs or obelisks, whatever you call them, kind of like a little druid's corner sort of thing. And now it's time for me to Mod Podge it. So I've covered the table with cardboard and I'm just going to paint the whole thing. Right, that took ages, and thankfully I've still got loads of Mod Podge left. Let's have a look. It's looking pretty sweet. We're back and everything is dry. I am going to start with this little kind of pond thing. I'm going to bring it up so you can see it a bit closer. So that was done with melting some of the XPS foam with nail polish. So it just melted it back and it's made a nice little pond in the thing. So I'm going to put some paint in there So the paints I'm going to be using are cobalt blue, ultramarine, cerulean blue, turquoise green, and possibly a little bit of emerald as well. Okay, so this is the little tester panel that I've been using just to check out my colors for the water. I'm going for a fake blue dark pool. I want it to look like it's a lot deeper than it really is. I'm going to do the whole thing in ultramarine and then build up lighter colors from the edges. Okay, ultramarine done. Okay, so as usual, I've just given that a little blast with the hairdryer to dry it quickly. And you can see it's dried very, very dark, which is what I want. I'm going to build it up. The great thing about this is if anything goes wrong and I don't like it, I can just Mod Podge it again and start again, but I'm feeling hopeful. I need to do a bit of dry brushing now. I'm not going to put this into the deepest parts of the pool. I don't necessarily want this pool to look hyper realistic or anything. I'm kind of seeing this as fantasy world, so it's almost got a magical quality to the pool, possibly. I want the colours to pop and be quite vibrant. Cerulean blue. So yeah, this one I'm definitely going to just dry brush it a little bit. So I've added a little bit of titanium white to my cerulean blue. This one is definitely very light brushing. That's so much better. That's exactly what it needed. I'm back and I'm just about to add a little bit of turquoise in as well. So this is sort of like green plant life that exists within the pool, possibly. And I'm just going to go ahead with the emerald green as well. Yep, done. Okay, so the next part is I'm going to pour some epoxy in there, and then there's another step. Okay, here we are with my two-part Gorilla Glue epoxy, and I'm hoping that it's going to be enough to fill the little pool. I think it should be enough. I'm not going to color the epoxy before I pour it, because I've done a few little experiments and none of them worked out in a way that I like. No, it's not a lot of epoxy, I have to be honest, that I have left, so hopefully it's enough to do this little pool. Okay, gonna pour it once it's in, can't go back. Okay, so the epoxy is set. There are quite a few little tiny bubbles in it, which is a little bit disappointing because that was the last little bit of epoxy that I have, but I'm just going to carry on. I think it looks great. I have another step here that I'm going to do with acrylic gel medium, which might help that out. And then at some point in the future, whenever I've got a bit of money to buy some more acrylic, I can basically dig out this pond, just scoop it out with a blade and start again, do another little pond, make it bigger or something. So for now it'll do grand. So with this acrylic gel, I'm hoping to make some circular ripple effects all the way out and just have it like a rippling pool. Thankfully with acrylic gel I got more working time than I would with the epoxy. Because it's a 5-minute epoxy, I had to do that so quick and I couldn't get the bubbles out. Well, it's the upside and the downside to a 5-minute epoxy is that it's got a super quick drying time. Upside is obviously you can move on with your project pretty quickly. The downside is if you get it a little bit wrong, you're stuck with it. Okay, so this gel that looks white on the top at the minute actually dries clear. So, but let's just take a quick closer look so you can see what we're talking about. You see? So when that dries out, we'll come back and have a closer look at it. Okay, so I've let that dry for a little while. It's not completely dry yet, so there's still a couple of little white spots, but the parts that have gone translucent definitely add to that water ripple effect.
very happy with the pool. I'm going to move on to the stonework now. For anyone who doesn't know, the order that I do things in is 80% coverage with graphite grey, then dry brushing with neutral grey value 5, and then I whiten down to a very light colour, the neutral grey again for the highlights. That is starting to look so cool. So we got our little pool, which is all dry and super shiny and water effecty. So currently this looks like a quarry. It's not a quarry. There's going to be lots of green and flocking, so the next set of dry brushing is going to be umbers and browns and greens in around this area. I'm going to leave this area quite sparse. But yeah, let's just get on to the next dry brushing. Okay, there. So next we're going to move on to anywhere that I want to have grass. I'm going to go for emerald green. So I'm quite happy with it so far, but I'm looking at this area and I'm thinking that I would quite like to have another stone outcrop here, and maybe it spills out over. Okay. Okay, so that's stuck on, so quickly get that painted up. I'm actually going to put some other rocks in around here. I've updated my rock outcrop and I think it looks really cool. Some sort of stone circle, as you can see. And now I want to create some kind of bendy old wizened tree that kind of leans out over the top of it, and there's this shady part in the middle, so some foliage over the top. And the way I think I'm going to do that is with string. I was going to just build it up from twigs. The problem with building up from twigs is it's not going to be the exact shape that I want, and I'm kind of looking for something specific. I might put an image on the screen now of the kind of tree that I'm looking for. So yeah, this is kind of the look that I'm going for, this kind of gnarly old magical tree that almost looks like it's alive and it's been there for years and years. So let's make some trees out of string. That really looks like an old, wizened, gnarly old tree. There is my tree, and I think that that looks awesome. Okay, so I'm ready to do some flocking. I wish I had static grass applicators and stuff like that. I don't. This is all base level, learning level diorama building, so the grass is probably going to lie a bit flat, but that's okay. It's a first time build. Once I've got the tree attached, I'm probably going to add a few more rocks in around the base just to make everything look a little bit overgrown and
things like that. So yeah, I have a watery mixed down PVA. I don't need it really thick. I've just got a watery thing so that whenever it dries clear. So yeah, I'm just going to apply that to the areas where I want my flocking to stay. This flocking is not actually hundreds and thousands. This is homemade flocking. The way I made this flocking was cutting up tiny bits of hemp string and putting it into a blender and blending it all up, and then adding some paint, and then putting it out in the sun to dry, and then breaking it all up again, putting it through a sieve, and this is what I ended up with. So this is homemade flocking. Again, doing things on a budget. I'm going to use a sieve to see if I can try and get it to stand up more on its end and also be less clumpy. Now that's got to dry. I'm hoping that the PVA dries clear. The flocking is on and looking pretty good. I may add some more in certain areas. This is looking a bit unnatural. I also want to add some of the acrylic gel in places to make it look like it's been a rainy day and it's wet. I am going to add some mushrooms now. Hopefully I can get this close enough, but on Wednesday last week I made a little tutorial of the mushrooms that I was planning to use, but it turns out that they were way too big, so I have made some super tiny ones, but with the exact same process. I have some of this, which is something from the garden that I found on an ivy vine growing out the side of the ivy vine, so I've kind of heated that up in the oven to sterilize it, and I painted it some green. I also have these little grass tufts which were made from hemp string. Again, hemp string for the win. No turning back now. Okay, that's the tree in place. The roots have been glued in around the base of the big rock. Just where it wasn't looking natural, I've just filled in the gaps with some bark, which I will paint up, probably to be a similar colour to the stones, but maybe with some browny tones in there as well, so it's looking like it's mud and stones, and that's how this tree managed to get purchased here. I don't know how much of that I missed, but you can see this little grassy bit here and this little grassy bit over here. Both look really, really good. So the way I'm going to attach these mushrooms is I'm not using hot glue. I'm going to do this with PVA, and I'm going to sharpen the points, and I'm going to put a bit of PVA onto the tip, and then I'm going to push them down into the foam. So at times like these, you've got to celebrate the little victories in life, and I am calling that an absolute little victory. Look at that. I am over the moon with how those little mushrooms turned out. Let's see if I can get them closer. Oh, that is so cool. I'm so happy with that. So we've got a little magical pool, some little magical mushrooms that can be picked by a little druid or something. Get a fix. Right, a few more bits of grassy tufts to add, and some wet effect, and then we're done. So, dry grass. We need some dry grass. Let's put some dry grass here. These little dry grass tufts were made by unraveling hemp string. This stuff, hemp string, kind of unraveling the ends like this until it was really fibrous, sticking them into hot glue and then trimming, and then feathering it out with your fingers, and that is my little dry grass tufts. One last little detail that I want to add to the diorama, and it's just for fun, is I want to put something in the cave, something scary. So I want to put a giant scorpion in there. So I was very lucky, my next door neighbour has a small box of little toys, and I was around there with my daughter and this was sitting there, and I was very rude and I asked if I could have it so I can chop it up and turn it into a scary looking, because that's not scary really. It's a bit friendly. So I'm just going to do a bit of a time lapse here of me chopping up and turning this into a more scary scorpion. Okay, so that's a nice coat of Mod Podge and black paint. I could just leave them just like a black scorpion, but I think I'm going to give them a bit of blow dry and do some dry brushing with some cerulean blue, like a really light dry brushing, just to give him a little bit of a neon tinge. And then I also want him to look a bit wet and kind of horrible looking, so I'm going to use some acrylic gel medium to give him a bit of a glossy effect. So. There we go. And I think a bit of blue has really helped him. So I'm just going to air dry and see how that looks in a minute. Stop recording. That'll make him nice and glossy and wet looking. I need to dry that out though. But just while I've been doing that, I've noticed on here on my board I have all these little drips of hot glue. I don't know if you can see these. And I think that these would make perfect little piles of scorpion eggs. So I'm going to incorporate that now into the build as well. I've got some scorpion eggs. I'll make some scorpion egg piles out of these little drips of hot glue. Okay, so here's the little glue gun drops that I think are going to look great as scorpion eggs. We're just going to stick them in the doorway. We can imagine that there's lots more eggs on the inside. The scorpion is protecting her eggs. Okay, so for this muddy section I want it to look like it's been raining and it's actually muddy and this is all kind of wet. So again using acrylic gel medium to give a wet look effect. There's actually some areas in here where it might turn into a little bit of a pond, such as here. Okay, so what I'm hoping is that that makes these areas look wet and muddy, but we're going to have to wait until that acrylic gel medium dries before we can find that out. While it's wet though, I'm going to add a few more little splashes of flocking just to make it look like there's some grass in the wet parts too. So this green that I have for the tree is just a bit too garish. I don't like the green. So on the advice of my wife Lucy, who is super smart about colours, she's advised me to go to the opposite end of the colour wheel and go for some reds, ready tones and oranges, and stipple them in around to kind of neutralise that a little bit. So I'm going to take some cadmium red, some cadmium yellow and some burnt rose and do some mixes and some water and just absorb it in and just see if we can neutralize this green a little bit. Yeah, this is looking a lot better now. The greens, like there's just more depth to it with a variety of different colors coming through. Okay, I think that's a lot better. It's not just one weird color of green, there's reds and stuff. It looks like the turn of the season. Hopefully when that dries, the colors come out nicely. That's it. That is it. I think I just finished my diorama. And that's it, finished. My diorama is all done. It was a lot of work but extremely satisfying. I've enjoyed the process so much and I'm just looking forward to getting on to my next build. So now I'm just going to leave you with some nice shots of this, a little bit of an outro, all shot by my nephew Elijah, who's a pretty talented camera guy. So yeah, thanks guys for watching. Please like and subscribe and enjoy this cool footage. Cheers, bye.